Hi, my name is Robin Bade. I'm the founder of a digital agency called Active Arc. During the last 8 years, I've been doing a lot of other entrepreneurship ventures, such as digitally related companies. I've started one company which has to do with it's an advertising network. Also, I'm involved in a couple of other companies, one in the health industry. We're working with a software which is then serving a new purpose in the health industry. I feel I have a lot of experience in generally in entrepreneurship, so happy to be here to talk about that.
Hi, I'm Alex Nieminen. I'm one of the founders of N2, which is, I think, the fastest growing advertising agency in Finland. And we're not just an advertising agency, but anyway, that makes it easier for anybody to understand. I started one of the first internet agencies in 1994, which I sold in 1997, and I just drift along. I do stuff that I love. And once I don't love it anymore, then I just sell it, and or you know, I do anything for money that I love. I have a children's record label together with a partner. I own 20% of a scuba diving shop chain of 7 stores in Finland. I'm a scuba instructor. I'm a radio host. I'm a recording artist. I'm a DJ, still back in the business now, and have my mix on national radio this Friday on Yle X. Listen to it at 11 o'clock. Some deep house and some deep techno, if you're into that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's I think about it.
And my name is Saku Tuominen. I'm a recovering TV producer. My history is that I produced TV shows for 20 years. We founded a company in 1989. We sold it to Sweden in 1995. We bought it back in 1998. Then we sold it again 2005 to another Swedish company, and we didn't buy it back. I was 2.5 years. I was the CCO of Zodiac, which is the world's 3rd biggest production company. I was the CCO of Zodiac. In London, responsible for improving the creative process in 34 companies in 17 countries. Instead of continuing there, I decided to come back, and we have founded now 4 companies, which I'm running. They're kind of like production companies of ideas. In addition to that, I've written 5 books and consulted roughly about 150 companies around the world in how to improve the creativity. But if I would kind of like summarize what are my biggest passions are producing ideas and being an entrepreneur, because that's something which I've been all my life, and that's why I'm extremely happy to be hosting this session. But before we'll start, I would love to ask from you.
It's the metro, I think.
They're building the metro, yeah. Anyway, brief question from you: which one of you are having companies of your own at the moment? Which one of you are planning to set up a company? Which one of you don't have any ideas to set up a company ever? Anymore? Do you have any wishes or hopes for the session? We are having a list of questions, and we are getting back to the questions at the end of the session. But is there something specific you want to know during the following 60 minutes? The only thing which I want to know is the results from the Espoo Blues game, which is happening at the moment. So if you have any results, please feel free to give it to me. But you know, if you need to interrupt, if you have any questions, please raise your hand, and I'm taking questions all along. And then at the end, we are having a Q&A session. But we'll start, and we are going back to the early days of your companies. When was the first company when did you found the first company? What was the year? Alex, it was the
when I was 18 and legally it was possible for me to found a company, so it was 1987.
And Robin?
Good question. I think I can't recall the year, but I know how old I was myself. So I think I was 18 years as well during the studies. I think that the company's name was something like RB, so quite self-centric. That was in Finnish terms the Tuominen at that point.
Because at that time it was not natural for Finns to set up a company, because the natural route was to be hired and work, have a long career or whatever, and everybody who couldn't get a job, they founded a company, but that was not like a big dream. So
I was one of those.
So was it a kind of like big decision for you to set up a company, or was it kind of like the obvious choice? Did it happen by accident? Or?
For me, I wanted to make some money while studying, so I think I actually applied for, at that point I think it was Ego. I applied for a work there, but I didn't get to the interview even, and then I just decided to make my own company, and then ended up that route. For me, it wasn't the decision really, because the best decision was to make, or the main decision was to make some money, and then eventually I ended up in the route of creating my own company.
I'm from an entrepreneurial family, I think, so it was never an issue whether to start a company or not. It was just whether it feels or fits to what I wanted to do in general. I think overall, I think my story is a bit different, because I knew that I would never get. I sucked in school, or I was pretty good in the sort of comprehensive school, but when I went to the high school, it just turned sour, because I wasn't really into the stuff that they were teaching there. I was questioning too many things. Like I was banned from the religion class for the third year, because I was asking, why are we supposed to say that these people are wrong in their beliefs, and the teacher didn't like that, and that actually happened in quite a few of the subjects. So my idea was more about that, if I want to succeed in life somehow, because I was only interested in DJing when I was 14 and 15, so I didn't plan a career. I've never planned a career, but I said that I thought that I have to make a living somehow, and I'm not going to get to the university anytime with my grades, and I'm not that smart that I will, no matter what I do, I will never get the kind of grades that I need to get to the university. Ironically, I'm there now. Ironically, I'm not doing anything to forward my studies, but that's a different story. So I thought that if I set up a company, that I can pool the kind of things that I was doing to bankroll the things that I really wanted to do. I just needed some kind of a vehicle to do that. But it was never a question whether, it was never an issue. I've always known that I will succeed to a level that sort of keeps my comfort. I lost that faith once, and I was depressed for 2 years and I couldn't do any work. But then when I recovered from that, it was okay again.
When you founded the company, was the main driver money?
No.
For you it wasn't, but for you it kind of like was all.
Well, I think my main driver was that I didn't want to be, I wanted to be my issue was that I didn't want to go and get money from my dad. So then eventually I needed to make some money to live and be able to study. So that was, I think, my dad was my main driver there.
I founded, the company we founded was when I was 21, and we had to go to the bank to get bank loan, and it was 200,000 Finnish marks, which is like 30,000 euros, and it was a huge money for me. I thought that I will never ever make it back. Did you have to get money to set up the company? Did you have to take the first loans? Can you sort of like try to remember the first feelings of getting the first loans, or kind of like the excitement there?
Yeah, I think people have been asking for some of the major mistakes I've done during my entrepreneurial career, and I think that one of the main problems or one of the main issues is that I haven't had to go and get that money from the bank, because if I had, I think I would have invested a lot more, or there would have been a bigger belief in what I do, and thereby actually I should have, or I would have had to trust my own distinction on things. And now I could always do that, like afterwards, reactively instead of proactively, build structures for the company and so forth. So I think one of the major issues for me was that since I got involved in the service business and you didn't really need any money for that, and I had all the skill sets myself, or at least I felt like that at that point. So it hasn't been a big issue, no.
I've never borrowed money for any business or had investors. I've always been in service or knowledge-based business, which doesn't or hasn't really required any outside investment. So I've just bankrolled it from cash flow, whatever I've done.
One of the great things of setting up a company is that you can do whatever you want pretty much, and the biggest problems is that you can do whatever you want. How did you choose the kind of like the area in which your company operates? Was it kind of like destiny, or were you 100% certain is that this is exactly what I want, or did it happen by kind of like accident?
Well, I think for me it was naturally since I was really interested in I think something wrong with the mic, I think. Anyway, I got interested in marketing, and then I was really interested in technology. So I was the guy who walked around all my friends' mothers and helped them to use their PCs and so forth. And then I somehow felt that the whole digital era and all the digital marketing activities came quite naturally to me, since I had the IT skills, and then I got interested in, or I was interested in marketing and sales. So I got into that route. I realized that a lot of the advertising agencies at that point didn't really jump into the opportunity of this digital stream, and then ended up working on that, creating medias for companies, more or less. So came really natural.
What was your question?
The question was that there's so many things which you are excited, but you are doing everything.
Now I remember the question. So I think in some retrospect, things that I did at some point are pretty much the same as Robin described. I was more interested in the daughters than the mothers, though. So
me too. That's why I went there.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but I think for me it's the main driver has always been passion for what I wanted to do. I've always seen a flaw, or I've seen some things that have been executed really badly, or bad ideas that have been executed well enough to succeed, and I've always wanted to improve something that I thought was done badly or was done wrong. So it's been always like a passion. You know, it's hard to say for perfection, because I don't feel that I'm naturally driven towards perfection, and Saku can probably have some words about that if he wants to. But I'm in many things I'm happy with the 80% rather than putting the extra 20 to get to the 100%. But I think there's a lot of people who try to be entrepreneurs who really shouldn't, and it's.
What do you mean?
Because I think it should be always motivated by your passion. I think that people, and I've never seen anybody succeed who's in it for the money. And even the people in Silicon Valley.
Except Robin.
Yeah, well,
no,
he's different.
It was more being afraid of my dad than get the money. So I'd say that there are other reasons.
Yeah,
But I think that there's a lot of people who are motivated about an entrepreneurial career for the sake of getting rich. And you get rich maybe in the due process. But if that's your goal, then being an entrepreneur is probably the wrong choice for you. You really have to be passionate about it. And even if you read all the interviews from great entrepreneurs, and I really think that, I don't think it's a great book, but I think everybody should read the Steve Jobs autobiography, or biography, and I think you've all read it. So not a big challenge there, but you can see that it was never about competing against Microsoft. It was never building Apple. And I think that people should be really passionate about changing the world or creating something new and really being behind the idea they have. You will get the money if your instinct about whether this is important also for somebody else than yourself happens. And that's been, being an owner in a chain of scuba diving shops, and there was one when I got in as an investor, or starting a children's record label, or starting a new agency. It's always about this needs to be done better, and people need better service or product in this category, and sometimes it works for the better, and sometimes it works for the worse. And
but you both have founded a lot of companies. What has changed throughout the years? I mean, are the business plans longer or shorter? Is the strategy more careful or not? Is the kind of like the thinking about business model change, the funding and so on? What has changed throughout the years?
For me personally, or for in general?
For you personally, as an entrepreneur.
I've never done business planning. That's first thing, and we.
Of course, you haven't done a traditional business planning.
No, it's like there's an opportunity, go for it.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I don't think that there has been.
But how do you analyze, for example, the business model? Is opportunity to make money, kind of like included?
No, I think it's opportunity to do something better than somebody else, and maybe it's a competitive thing, and I don't feel competitive, which is weird.
But you haven't done any non-profit companies or whatever. They all have been for the money at the end.
Yeah, of course. I think I like money. It's not a question of that. But it's to maintain my high maintenance lifestyle, and and I think it's a good thing I'm not addicted to anything, because I think that I would just I wouldn't have money to support an addiction to anything. But it's for me personally, I don't think that anything has really changed. I think there's been a lot of changes in attitude towards being an entrepreneur, and people's, when I started my own first company in 1987, people thought it was crazy to start your own company. You should go to a big company and go to university and try to go to school and get yourself a nice entry-level job there and be there for forever. And I think that now there are people who actually thrive also on good grounds to become entrepreneurs, who really think that, hey, there's a freedom there and whatever. And I read a lot of studies, and I don't know if too many people know this, but Finland has about half of the percentage point of population being entrepreneurs to other EU countries on average. So we have about 5% of Finns being entrepreneurs, and in everywhere, well, the median in EU is around 10%. So there's still some way to go to be there, but I think that
isn't it partly because we have the tradition is that if you have a company, you never see vacations or whatever, it's going to be a hellish life, and so on. And at the end, the best result is either divorce or suicide or whatever. So it's kind of like
both good options. So
did we talk about the business plan? Or?
Yeah. I mean, what has changed for you? Are you making business plans?
No. Or I made one during my studies, because that was my end thesis, and I've never opened the book since that or after that. Anyway, I think in terms of business plans, I think that there needs to be a business model that you need to do, and you can write it out in 4 Excel cells, and then that's it. And either it's selling hours or selling services or selling products or selling value or whatever. But I think it's worth having a business model, and then nowadays I feel that the whole business life cycle has become somewhat shorter, but what that brought with it is sort of more iterative processes that companies are fine with not having a 5-year strategy or 10-year strategy. I think you should have the North Star somewhere there, and that leads you forward. But anyway, I think people are fine with having a yearly or bi-yearly strategy update, and then.
Agree. By the way, what do you think about the current business climate where you don't even need to have, there seems to be a tendency that you don't need to have a business model. Sort of like start it and the business model will come. There's huge amount of companies which don't have any business model.
Yeah,
and the valuation
I'm
is
involved
huge.
in one. and I must say, I'm not too convinced that that model is really the right one. Because the only thing you see is...
It was okay for Instagram.
Yeah, probably it works for some people. I quite envy people that are able to get into a business like that, because myself, I couldn't. I somehow think about, all right, if we do this, we need to get something out of it. It's not getting a lot of money, but it's creating value for something. It's either creating value for your own time or whatever.
Yeah, I think there is one thing that that just came to my mind from what Robin is saying, that we're not really entrepreneurs, either one of us. We're really craftsmen. It's like a käsityöläisyys tradition. It's like we're, I think...
my analog was a timber when I was...
Yeah, well anyway, so I think that there's a different kind of entrepreneur. I think that we're really sort of Finnish type of entrepreneurs, and I think that a lot of people here are really into the sort of Silicon Valley, Instagram type of entrepreneurs. And I think that there's...
Or you make $1 billion.
And I think
I could go that way.
Yeah, and I think that there is in a way, I think, it's a good change that you have this kind of entrepreneurship as well. But I think that it still should be, it should still be driven by passion to do something better or creating something for greater good. And by the way, there's a good thing about Instagram. The founder of the company, I just found out this today, was actually a marketing guy. So he learned to code by just teaching himself during the nighttime, but he was a marketer. So I think there is a future for marketers as well. By the way, that's the lowest scum you can be. Being an entrepreneur in Finland and being in advertising. That's like a double negative. So
yeah, I think that's us. I actually, one thing, I made some notes last night, and one thing when we talked about this business model, and I think one thing which I've tried to use quite a lot is to get that North Star, even though you don't have a business or you don't have a business model or you don't have a lot of customers or anything like that.
Can I interrupt? What do you mean by North Star?
Like North Star being somewhere, like a vision that you want to go there.
I understand, but it's kind of like a vision of your company in 3 or 5 years, or
either a vision of your company or a vision of you. Yeah. And I think, but anyway, I think if you haven't read a guy called Guy Kawasaki, and he made, I think, one of his best sayings or things that he wrote. I think there's a thing that he's talking about the art of making meaning, and there's 3 ways of making meaning in a company. One is increase the quality of life, right a wrong, or prevent the end of something good. And more or less, I found that as he's stating, that all the companies are trying to do one of these 3 things. And if a company isn't doing any of these 3 things, then I think the company most likely won't succeed. Because then the company is only after money and they don't have a greater meaning or an entrepreneur that has a North Star.
Well, let's go to the current day and your current companies. Can you give sort of like a 60-second pitch of your companies? ActiveArc, for example, being that one, and N2. What is the company doing and what is your North Star? Where will you be in 3 or 5 years? And what is kind of like the main driver of the company for yourself at the moment? And also you can give the figures. How big is the company? How many employees? And so on.
So in terms of us, I think our challenge have always been to right the wrong, and I think our challenge has been that we've realized that a lot of companies in the marketing industry is doing marketing the wrong way, and we want to fix that, and we want to take it to the modern world, and we feel that there's a lot of legacy in the old models of doing marketing in advertising agencies, and we don't want to be a part of that, then we do our own thing. So our thing is to modernize marketing, and there's a lot of aspects nowadays. Services are part of marketing and so forth. So instead of looking at the figures where companies look at the media spend and they realize that right, companies use this much money on their media, the whole business has changed. Nowadays you should be looking at media consumption. I mean, what are the average people, how do they consume media? And 90% is digital, and most of the digital assets out there are created by some company as media. So that's in the business we are in, and in terms of the company nowadays, we're in 3 locations in Helsinki, Mumbai, and London. I can tell you about why we're in those places. That's an interesting story. We're about 80 people in total. Daily, there's around 100 people working, but 80 employees. In terms of figures, I think we're around 8.5 million in revenues or turnover.
And you are also involved in some other operations or companies, is that correct?
Yeah, but as a company, we've invested in 2 other ventures. Two being spin-offs that we've done from our earlier. We tried to sort of create a marketing agency which would include products and this ad network thing, but we realized that you can't create. You don't want to be creating a mall as such. So instead of, you need to have one business model in a company. Didn't work for us having 2 different business model under one roof. So then we spinned these out, and then the companies became their own companies, and by that started flying.
In two, we have around 50 people now. We have a revenue of about 4.5 for last year. This year we're aiming to be around 6. We have really 2 businesses. We have the advertising agency part, which is about 2/3 of who we are, or maybe half actually. And then we have the fastest growing part is actually the sort of user experience design part called N20, which is around 15 people now, and we started it last summer. We have a simple plan, which is that we are the founders. Both of us have been in the marketing communications for a long time, and in a way, it's I think we have maybe a little bit different point of view or outlook than Robin has, but basically we say that we want to be in the future first. So whatever is happening in marketing communications, we want to be there. I think there's a lot of commonalities in where people think that marketing and advertising are going, like content and services being part of marketing and so forth. But it kind of goes into details and actually really to execution and results. And we, I think we have some different aspects there. One thing we're going to do this year, which we have already announced, is integrate media planning into our creative planning, which is taking the booking and all, how we're going to do that and when we're going to do that this year, how we're going to do it. No idea really. Hiring the right people, that's usually a good way to start. And we do quite well-known companies as clients, Elisa, Stora Enso, Norwegian, Audi, and so forth, Linnanmäki.
There's a lot of complaining in Finland about Finnish companies that they don't have guts to grow, which means that they are quite careful and so on. But you've been growing quite fast. So what is kind of like your ABC from how do you grow the company from employing 5 people to someone that is employing 80 or 100 or operating in 3 countries? What should you, for example, these companies, what is the right way to grow?
Tough one. I think first of all, the right way of growing is not setting a milestone for yourself that you need to be 50 people, because then most likely you'll start growing the wrong way. So the right.
So then the North Star cannot be 50 people. It cannot be kind of like a figure. It has to be something else.
No. Well, I feel that or the end result has been more people, and the reason for that has been that we've built teams with different knowledge mixes, and those have been the knowledge mixes needed for type of projects and work we've been doing. So the result has been people, but the objective hasn't been adding a lot of headcounts.
But did you have the moment of kind of like the leap of faith, which means that you have to make the decision is that now it's the time to grow and you have to take the risk?
No,
and do it?
I think I'm living in that leap of faith every day. So each day I think you have decisions like that.
Yeah, but there's still many people say, for example, that you employ 10 people and then growing from 10 till 30 or 40, that's kind of like the big leap.
Yeah, there is. Well, I've found it at least that there is. Usually, you have that sort of safe haven around at around 6-7 people. So when you have, I don't know why it is, but I've had enough companies to feel that you're really comfortable, you're really intimate with, everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows what everybody is doing. It's kind of a safe place to be when you have around 6 or 7. Or first you have the sort of first 2-3 people, but I think the growth goes by sort of certain stages, and I think that 6-7 growing from there to 10 is actually a big leap. It's actually what I felt it's always the biggest leap, because then
from 6 till 10.
Yeah, and then I think the next phase is around 30, 40, and then it's around between 70 or 100 maybe. But you need different type of management style, you need different kind of tools for managing people, and you kind of lose the intimacy that everybody knows what everybody is doing, and that's kind of hard. And it's also very hard, and I think recruitment is the most important work any entrepreneur has, because it's you need to find hardworking people, but you need to find good people who can take your ideas further and actually, I think one rule is that, which is easy for me, that you should always hire people smarter than yourself, who can actually, and you have to give them the room to also take you to outside of your comfort zone. But then also keep, whether it's a North Star or whatever you like to call it, but kind of that, somebody calls the shots and it's going to be me. And so it's an interesting balance. But if you don't have people who are challenging you, or who have the guts to say that, old man, you're wrong, then you're not going to improve what you're doing. You're just, you will have this sort of small, or either it's slow or rapid deterioration of what you're trying to accomplish. So, but I think that there are certain stages, and they have characteristics, and you have to make a conscious choice that this will change our company, and it's not a bad thing necessarily. But you have to understand that when you have 6 or 7 people and suddenly you have 15, it's a different dynamic. You need to run it differently. When you have 15 to 20 people, or you have 60 people, it's a different kind of company.
And actually, even though it's in theory it's possible, there's no going back. Once you go from 20 till 60, it's extremely difficult to downscale it back to 20 or whatever. It's gone forever.
No, then you have to, I think there's a really interesting model, which is how many people know the company called W.L. Gore and Associates? Who knows Gore-Tex? Anyway, it's I've read a couple of interesting articles about the company, that they have this mandated break point, that once a unit of that company grows to maybe it's 120 people, they say that half of you have to go and set up a new company or come up with a new idea, and the rest of you can start just improving what you're doing here. So they have a lot of campuses and offices, and they try to generate these new businesses. I don't know how it works exactly, but I think that that's a really smart way of keeping the sort of spirit of innovation going and a small scale. But if you go from 100 to 20, you really fucked up really badly somewhere.
How do you both sort of like balance the management duties and the creative duties? Because what happens quite easily is that the person who is the key creative becomes the key manager, who is actually not brilliant in managing.
That's the way to go to 100 to 20 really quickly.
myself, I delegated that work. I was at one point at
Which one, the management or creativity?
Yeah, the management part. So I was at the point, I think 2 years ago, where I think I've done a few mistakes on the few couple of years before, and that ended into a result where I needed to look at myself in the mirror and decide on what I want to be doing, and then at that point I realized that I can't do two things, even though I did a lot of other things as well, but two main things were either being a part of the real work we do or then actually looking at the management, because we were at that point just crossing the magical figure of 50 people, and then all the operational organizational structures demanded a lot of work, and then I just realized that it was easier for me to delegate the management part than the real sort of the work substance that we do. So I stick to that.
When you are growing, you are also building or trying to keep the company culture together, to build great teams. How do you balance that one? When you are hiring a lot of people, how do you make certain that you are not losing the culture? Because if you lose the culture, you are losing a lot of things.
Well, for me at least, I mean, the whole company culture has been the whole backbone of our business. So I think I don't think there's sort of a magic way of keeping the culture. I think the people that has been a part of the culture, if all the people just disappear, then obviously most likely the culture disappears as well. But anyway, I think still it's the whole team creating the culture, but somebody has created a part of the culture. And then
what are the key characteristics for you of your companies, or a good company culture? What are kind of like the essential things?
I think the key characteristic for me is that if it's a company which I feel happy to go to, then I think the company culture is good.
There were, I think, 2 or 3 questions there in a row. I tried to remember once again what they were. Well, I disagree in part about company culture. First of all, the company culture is made by the people who are there. So trying to keep a company culture, I think, is a wrong way of doing. I think you need. I think you need to have. I think you need to have ground rules, and you need to have. You need to have a soul to the company, which is something that you can't really direct that much. It's about tonality or tone of voice, the kind of way you're running the company, and what kind of choices you make as a company. You know, there are ethical issues, there are business issues, there are management style issues. There's a bunch of things like this that you kind of that are things that you can't really even in many cases pinpoint that these are things that are part of this culture and whatever. But I think that if you're trying to hold on to something, you're kind of limiting yourself. Whereas I think that every person should in an exponential way create something better out of the company. And that's why recruitment is such a crucial issue, that you get people who share this maybe a vision about where we're going and how we're going to do that. But I think that there is one key element.
But do you think that a company culture rules out that people can come and bring new ideas and things to the company?
No, but I don't think that there is like, when we were 6, we had like, this is what we want to hold on to, and it can never change.
But that's not what I'm saying. I think the way we look at it is that the company culture is about challenging what we do today. So I think that already gives the potential to anybody who comes there the first day. A few weeks ago, a trainee came to me and challenged how I work. And God, I loved that.
And Steve Jobs was actually quite good in sort of like repeating the cliche think differently, meaning is that all the designers, all the coders or whatever, they said that because you're part of the Apple, you have to think differently because that's our DNA.
Yeah, but I think people sort of mix two things together which are not the same. And it's culture and philosophy. And I think that we have a very strong philosophy of what we want to be and where we want to go. And we have very simple. We want to have the best creative product there is, what comes out of the agency. No matter what the outcome or what the media is, we want to excel in our creative product. And that overrules anything else. It overrules people and their personal goals. It's kind of it's an obsession in a way that this is what we want to do and nothing gets in our way. And if you're not willing to live in that kind of culture or work in that kind of culture, which is competitive, it's about your ideas being crushed, it's about sometimes your ideas being, elevated to a different height, then it's not the right kind of place for you. And we don't try to accommodate anybody or everybody. We are very, I think we're one of the hardest agencies in Finland to get a job. Not because we don't have work for people to do, we would have work for many, many more people to do, but we just can't find people who are willing to share the philosophy. And then you can ask, is this the right way to run a company or something? And it's like, if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else, but you're not going to be working here.
Let's talk about exit strategy. Do you have one? How do you see the future of your company? How do you see the increasing value? You, for example, you are not. You haven't gone abroad, for example, N2. And then why is that? And how do you see the future years of? Do you want to be? If someone would come to buy, would you sell? Are you planning to sort of like make the company as big that the value is great or whatever? How do you see it, or are you anti-selling it?
Well, I think we sold out before we started, which was easy. We sold 20% of the company to WPP.
But isn't it that you said that you didn't lend any money, and in a way you did? Because
yeah, that's true, by the way.
Funding.
Yeah, that's true. I've never thought about it as a loan. I thought it as an investment, and or actually I found it as a. There was a strategic reason for it. We actually, in order to be in a right position, we needed to give part of the company away, which has turned out to be a fantastic. In hindsight, it was. Of course, it helped do what we wanted to do, but there was a strategic reason, which was the wrong strategic reason, but it led to a right strategic partner. So I'm actually quite happy what happened there, without saying what exactly happened. But my exit strategy is death. I don't, I love what I do. I don't, I'm getting old, and I've accomplished so much in my mind that I don't really care about that much more money.
What do you care about? Work-wise. What is kind of like
to do excellent work. And it's kind of going back to that sort of passion for doing something better than anybody else, and people looking at it. Fuck, they do better stuff than anybody else.
But why only in Finland? Why not in UK or Moscow or?
Well, I have a family. I don't want to travel that much. Then it's another thing, which is that we're actually working for a multi-billion company, and they chose us over a number of international big networks for digital marketing things. So we're actually doing maybe 30-40% of our work actually goes outside of Finland, and some of these companies are not Finnish. So it's I don't think you actually have to go to a lot of places. I think you have more practical reason why you need to have offices around the place. And I'm not saying that it's a wrong thing to do, but I think for us it's the passion is about the excellence in quality of work, and it's not about the money will come if we do good work, and that's and if that leads at some point us having an office somewhere else. In advertising agency world, you need to understand the structures and the networks and the holding companies and everything. It's actually very hard to grow outside of your home market unless you can attract customers in another market so that they choose you over the other networks and holding company structures and whatever.
Or then you just go there. That's the other option.
Yeah, but for instance, the work that we're doing for an unnamed multi-billion company. They came to us because of the quality of work. So, and you look at the Swedish companies, they don't expect, you look at Forsman and Bodenfors, which is one of the best agencies in the world, and they don't expect people, or companies don't expect them to go to where they are, they go to them. Or the Australian bank who chose Goodby Silverstein and Partners, who are on the opposite side of the world. They're advertising agency based in San Francisco, and they wanted to hire the best advertising agency in the world. So they work despite of a like 12-hour time difference. They work together, and it's a crazy thing. I think the physical location is not that important anymore.
Yeah, well, I partially agree and disagree. I think I agree.
Disagree more.
No, I agree with the fact that if you have extensive experience, then you can also support the whole quality of your work, and everything is something which has already got more known and so forth. In our case, we were a few-year-old company. We were all inexperienced people. We were experienced as we went. We decided we want to go abroad. There wasn't anybody knocking on our door at that point. They were all knocking on the Swedish people's door. And by the way, the reason for that was that the Swedes went there. They went to London while the Finns went to Sweden. And I went to London. I figured out that all the Swedes are knocking on these advertising agencies' doors. And they didn't go to the end customers. They went to the ad agencies. And then eventually they took all the work from the ad agencies and ended up to the end customers. So we tried to replicate that model and just went to London. Instead of paying some consultant to tell us how to do that, we just decided to use the money for just going and see what comes out of it.
But exit, yes or no?
Well, myself, I made the decision already a long time ago that I'm in this for the work, and that's if when you go abroad and you structure the company like we've structured, it's not the exit strategy directly.
One question about the direction. Pretty much all the Finns seem to go to either first Stockholm, then you go to London, then you go to Valley. And a lot of people, for example, in Silicon Valley are asking is that why on earth are you going to Silicon Valley? Why don't you go to Moscow or Beijing or Shanghai or whatever? What is your opinion about that one?
I've been to Russia quite a lot. I've worked with a few operators in Russia, and I'd say that even though I love Russia, it's one of the places I'd like to be working more in. The business culture there is quite different, and especially when we talk about service business. So the service business is challenging as hell in Russia. I'd say that the service business, even though it's challenging in Asia, it's a bit simpler in Asia in that sense. So I would rather than go to Silicon Valley, if you're in the service industry, go to Asia somewhere. And Singapore is a good place to start from. Or any of the Chinese capitals now, either Shanghai or Beijing. Then, well, yeah, I think that's more or less it.
Alex?
I just don't care. that's so simple. Because we are. There is no secret to our business, and we have very different kind of businesses. We're much more in. We don't have almost any production at all. So we're basically working on brand strategies and stuff like that. So it's about having the right people, and you have a.
Have you been to our office?
No, I don't.
I haven't been to yours. I don't know.
Invitation.
Well, you can see our work. It's everywhere, so that's easier to find. So I think our business is not that scalable, and no matter where you're based in, and you see there are the McCanns and Ogilvies, and there are the kind of agencies. And all of the networks are in deep shit. Every single one of them has tried to, how can we get the digital part in? How can we do this? How can we attract more? Because customers are going the other way. They're looking for the hot shops around the world. Somebody has a good reputation, and clients will just go. They don't need a network anymore. That's what the digital world has created. That you don't need to have 20 offices or even 5 offices. You had people going to. A few years ago, there was one of the best agencies that actually won the best agency in the US award 2 times out of 3, which was Crispin Porter Boguski out of Miami. And that's the same thing as in you would have an advertising agency in Kokkola that would be the best agency in Finland. And I don't know if how many of you get this analogy here. And then what they decided, because of
Miami of Finland, Kokkola.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then one of the partners was so into skiing that he wanted to move the agency to Boulder, Colorado, and then he quit the agency, which was fantastic. So, and they had people coming on, and of course, US has a very different culture in this, but our business is not scalable. The thought process kind of work, you need to have, you can share philosophy and you can share some values, and sometimes good work can come out of something like this, but it's all about business, and it's just about the business, and it's very hard to grow, and I don't think that I'm interested in the quality of work. If this isn't clear now, then I will repeat it a few times afterwards. So I think that there is still a lot for us to get better about, and I think that people will come knocking on our doors. Right? I think there's something I don't like to go to people and say what we do, and I rather do something that will catch the eye of the people, and some of the work we've done has already done so. So I rather wait that they come to us, and you know, if they don't, then we'll just grow here.
Let's before we go to the Q&A, let's have a short round of kind of like short answers and the classic tips round. So let's go to we've been covering them, but there's a room full of entrepreneurs, and you've been running your company, setting up companies for 20 years. So first question is business idea. If they have a business idea, what are you kind of like looking for? What is a good business idea? Sort of like extremely briefly, business idea. What is your tip on that one?
A big enough idea. I think that the Finns are most of the ideas are too small.
Original, commercial in the way that you can see that this can. There's a lot of good, really technical ideas, and which are not really business ideas, and I think that that's a big distinction. Idea, timing, execution, team.
How do you find the ideas? How do you sort of like, do you have a process, or is it more about being open or whatever?
I think experiencing things. Yeah. The best business ideas I've come across is when I walk on the street or just do things which I don't think about the business idea.
Okay, then pivoting ideas, changing the business plan. You know, it's a difficult question, because you know whether you should be persistent or whether you should change everything, and what is the right moment to kind of like to make the big change of the direction.
Every day. We don't plan for years or in the future. We have a philosophy that we follow, and sometimes we notice that things we're doing isn't working, and we just change it immediately. I think the worst thing about change is not to do it quick enough.
For me, it's mornings. So in the morning I'm sharp, then I do the decisions. In the evenings there's too much stuff going on, and then the mind isn't clear enough anymore.
Then branding. How do you improve the brand? You are helping others to improve the brand. How do you improve your own brand?
I think authentic. Alex talked about original. I think authentic is something that it needs to be you, and especially in the digital environment nowadays, the only things that actually pop out are unique, original ideas, and where somebody actually has something unique to talk about. Those are the things that will come out.
Brand is what you do, and if you do great things, your brand is great. It's I don't think it's any more complicated than that. It's about doing great work.
But for startups, for example, PR strategy, how should you do it? Should you hire an agency? Should you do things yourself? Should you send emails? Should you go there? Should you do events?
Well, when I went to London, that was, or I feel, one of the more challenging business environments for a Finn that didn't have any connections in London and just went there. I used LinkedIn a lot. I just shot out mails and then eventually got meetings and just booked meetings with people. I think you need to do it yourself. If you book other people to do it, then I don't believe in that type of business.
Be old, have friends, that helps.
You discussed already, but hiring people. If there's a company that they're having 3 or 4 people working and they want to hire 2 people, what should you do? What should you? Is it CV? Is it expertise? Is it gut feeling? It's a difficult question, but that's why I'm asking it.
For me, it's been gut feeling a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. And by the way, every time I book an hour for a recruitment meeting, I've already made a decision after 2 minutes, whether you're going to be hired or not.
Then what about growing your company? How should you do it?
Lean backwards.
What do you mean?
Hire when you absolutely need to. Especially when you're growing, I think there's a big drive to grow, and if you grow too fast, you will dilute the philosophy. If you become successful too soon, and what's too soon when you have been growing 400 or 50% a year, I don't know, but I think it's been manageable so far. But I think it's a matter of being having aggressive growth in a slow way, which means that you only hire people when you really, really need them, and you don't hire people just because you need to fill a seat to be able to, carry on with the work. Because one bad apple can destroy the work environment for 15, 20 people. And also, I think people should be fired more during the sort of koeaika, because if it doesn't work out in the first month or so, it will never work. That's my experience.
What was the question?
The question was the kind of like the key things about. Was it about hiring? It was about growth. Yeah. So if they have a company that is employing at the moment 3 or 4 or 5 people, what should be your opinion or kind of like your advice regarding growth? Should you grow or not? When should you grow? When should you take the leap?
First of all, I think that the growth needs to be decided by the key people. So I think I've been in probably 95% of all the recruitments that has been done, apart from when I've been abroad. But I think that's one key thing, that the person who is in charge, or the founder or somebody who has the vision, then that person needs to be in making the decisions for the recruitments. Then in terms of when to grow, I think it's never a bad time to grow as long as you grow with quality in mind. So especially in terms of the service business, it's a dead end if you just grow by trying to get out money from work, because the last project that you did is defining the quality of your work, and if that gets worse, then you shouldn't be growing.
Then 2 more questions. First, combination, strong board, yes or no? Should you listen to them or no? And then VC money, yes or no?
Well, what's a strong board?
Meaning is that you are trying to combine like 3 or 4 respected experts who come and give you an advice
so
regarding
myself, and myself, or who? No, well,
I'm talking about them, if you have a startup of
sure.
3 or 4 people.
Sure. I think I'm now in 2 different schools. So I'm in a few companies where there's a sort of strong board, and then there's a few companies that don't have a strong board, so the entrepreneurs are the board. And I think I can't say which one is better. I think that there are 2 different schools. It all has to do with the entrepreneur. So if the entrepreneur gets kicks out of the board who actually then challenge him or her, then I think then you need a strong board. But you need people that are able to give you something. Unless they give you anything, they just sit there and challenge you with things that are for no purpose, then I think you should fire the board.
And VC money, are you kind of like positive or a bit suspicious?
Well, I don't have too much good experiences in that. All the businesses I've been involved in where there's VC money, all the entrepreneurs have been trying to get out of the VC money.
Alex?
I think with VC money you will get strong board whether you like it or not, and whether it's a good or not. And some people are better. Some of the bankers are better than the other bankers. So so that kind of dictates the first point. Then whether you should get, and where do you get people who would be smarter about how you run a business based on your business idea? I agree that there might be two different schools that might work. I think it's you need to have a case by case point on that. But I think that if you have board members who are not actively involved with developing the business or their own money on the line, I would be very suspicious of them, and I wouldn't hire. But then I think when I was involved with one of the summer programs, I think last year here, and I heard a lot of business ideas and whatever. I think that they would have gotten more out of their idea if they had somebody sparring them earlier in their business idea. I think they were, in many cases, commercially quite immature, and some of the fundamentals of their business made it impossible for that business idea ever to be a commercial business idea. And so I think where you go for ideas and opinions and how you measure it against your own vision or idea of your business, I think that's really an interesting and important question. I think you should be open to outside opinion at the right phase and right kind of opinion at the right time. But I don't think that Finland really has that kind of culture. I don't know how many people I would listen to give me advice on anything I do, but it can be just me too.
I've been having kind of like the same kind of problem is this, that every time I've been listening to someone and doing against my own gut feeling, it's been the wrong decision. So it's kind of like trust your instinct.
Yeah, all the mistakes I've made in my life, there have been things that I've first thought that I should never do this.
Okay, the last question before Q&A is going to the burnout or vacation. What is your opinion about the personal life or keeping the energy? Because it is quite demanding to have a company or whatever, and how should you take care of yourself as an entrepreneur?
What I've done is I've once a year I've always went somewhere alone for a week and just think, and it worked for me. I've driven in the States, in Asia, and a lot of different places, and just think. I think as an entrepreneur you should take more time, because the thinking is one of the key assets, and nowadays I think people don't have enough time, or at least people don't take enough time, and somehow you need to put yourself in a situation where you have time to think, and then that will also lead to better quality business.
Yeah, I tend to think less and do more, and just redo something or do different than if something we've decided to do turns out to be the wrong thing to do. I don't like to be alone, so I spend. And by the way, this is, people make entrepreneurs work sound like that it's always taxing, and it takes away time from your loved ones or whatever. It doesn't, and it doesn't have to. When I stop work, usually around 5:15 every day, I just stop working. There will be more work next morning when I go back there at 9 o'clock, and it will never be all done. And I just don't care about it. I just don't answer emails, or I don't answer phone calls, and I leave some of the things for other people to do that maybe I should be doing myself at some point. But this is not really that hard. Or there are so the hard thing is to do what you do better, and that's not time based. It's quality based. So, and sometimes time brings you quality in whatever you're doing, but sometimes it really is performance based. And so I think that how hard the work of an entrepreneur is much hugely over exaggerated, and I think that you can make your own decision how difficult you want to make it to yourself. And I think that there is something that works really badly for Finns especially, is the sort of combination of, I think, quite deeply ingrained Protestant ethic that we seem to be having, no matter how religious you are, but it's kind of I think it's a sort of national trait in a way, and that combined with the American, you have to put in 16 hours or otherwise you're not doing. I think this is a lethal combination, because I think that Finns by nature, at least many Finns I know and like and rate and work with, they are really committed to doing good work and whatever. And I've noticed myself, and this was actually not it wasn't me who noticed it. It was actually Lenin who did it, that you need 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for personal time, and 8 hours for work, and that's a good balance. And I see that, as Robin said, I see a deterioration of quality of work after around 9-10 hours. The work that I come out with is never really that good. So rather I drink, eat, have sex, play with my kid, listen to music, watch a film, take a trip, whatever it is, to recuperate and then sleep properly, and then I can put the 101% in those 8 hours that I work. And then I take a lot of weekend trips. I go diving, or we go diving. I play with my kid. I listen to a lot of club music. I go to clubs. I drink.
Isn't it kind of like how you define it? Because if I'm analyzing myself, is that I'm having quite a lot of vacations, and on the other hand, I'm working 365 days a year, because that's the part of having a company as well. So it depends how you count. Brief comment, and then we'll take.
For me, I've more or less always been interested in what I do. I've seen this work as more or less like a hobby as well. So I have a hard time distinction between holidays and work and so forth. The only real holidays where I referred to thinking was I've been going to a few times, went to the Amazons, and then you don't have a cell phone line or anything there, so you can't do anything than just being in the nature and then thereby actually thinking. So I think that type of stuff is what.
Okay, I'm having one more question which I will ask at the end. Now we are taking some questions from the audience, but the question is so difficult. It's like I'm going to give you the question now, but you don't have to answer. The point is that what is the company you would love to found, but you kind of like haven't had the time? So you have to donate one idea to the people. Is that this is something I would love to do, not enough time, but one day I will, unless they steal it. So at the end, you are giving a business idea away. But in the meanwhile, any questions from the audience?
What is the role of design in your companies? We've been talking a lot about marketing and there's a lot of techie folks, but are they only people who do the shovel?
And how do you define design?
I was just going to say, I need to have some time to think about Saku's question. So can you first define design, and I'll come to your.
I can answer that. I think we've defined that we want to have 3 main competences. One being design as overall marketing design, meaning visual, etc., contextual, and so forth. And then also technical skill sets, and then business skill sets. So those are the 3 main pillars that we put together in our work, and design is the main driver. I mean, we're a design agency.
Same for us.
But are you sort of like, when you are improving service, are you calling it design thinking or design, sort of like service design as everyone?
I don't like the labels, but it's about making that experience better. It's called service design because that's what people like to buy.
But question for you, do you mean design thinking as a broad context, so that it's about service design, or do you think kind of like traditional definition of design, which sort of like giving form to through the services?
In our the way we've defined it internally is that the output of our work is creative, and every technical guy, every visual designer, every UI designer, all these people are serving the purpose of making creative output, right? And designers are everybody as well. So a technical guy, even though he's coding, he needs to design what he's coding. So I think designing refers to how you need to think what you do before you do in that matter.
I'm quite jealous because I was producing TV shows for 18 years and I decided to stop and maybe not do it ever again. But one thing which was funny is that we were producing some game shows, and it was kind of like I was sort of like not extremely proud. But if it would be 2012, I would say that what is your occupation? I would say that I design game shows. It would be, otherwise I produced game shows, but now game show designer, it sounds so much more grandiose because everything is designed these days.
Yeah, but that's why I don't really like to talk about design. I think there is, whether it's abroad or in a narrower context, we have, I like to talk about creativity in even wider spectrum, and we have, of course, we have many different roles ranging from software developers who need to design their work before they do it and so forth. But I think it's more about having that creative mindset of trying to find new and novel solutions to, you know, the problems haven't changed at all what we are trying to achieve, which is to make people buy things more from our clients. And sometimes it happens in a longer, or sometimes it happens in a shorter cycle. And how you can change that cycle is about how you design that change process. But I don't like to talk about design because it gets into it gets to the sort of wanky sphere.
Other questions?
That's true. You shouldn't go for venture money when you're working in this business, really.
What should you do?
Because it doesn't scale in that way unless you have a way of, you know, industrializing some part of that creative work. I think in Finland the biggest problem, when I work a lot with designers of, you know, formgivare, what are they? Industrial designers and graphic designers and so forth, and they're always working in agency that has 2 employees or maximum 3 employees or something like that, and it's really, really stupid. And it's the same thing with there have been some really good fashion designers lately, in the last 10 years or so. Why on earth are they all working by themselves? Why don't they just form a company together that has different sections, and they would have, instead of not having any money for marketing at all, they could actually have little money for marketing when they are marketing a sort of portfolio of stuff. But I think that in the, and of course creative industries is a very broad term, I think there are some parts that actually might need venture capital money, but I really think that much of this is craftsmanship.
But one question. I discussed, for example, with Mikael Silvanto, who is now part of the Apple design team and great guy, and he was so frustrated with Finland because they were doing great products and he didn't get any funding. No VC money, absolutely not. Banks, no money, no loans, nowhere. So 0 funding from after 12 months.
What do you mean? What do you need money for? You look at Frog Design, you look at IDEO. IDEO was spun off.
Consulting, kind of like.
Yeah, but they are design companies. So they've been all managing their growth from cash flow, and I don't think that. Yeah, and they're still employing maybe a couple of hundred people worldwide.
Maybe there's a big difference because they are